Aloha and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Got Your Six podcast. This six-question podcast brings together high performers to share their methods, strategies, and ideas, delivered in an informative and, most importantly, actionable way that'll help you lead yourself and those around you from the battlefield to the boardroom. Coming to you every episode, I'm your host, Tony Nash. And into the breach.
Nothing mentioned on this podcast is an endorsement or opinion of the Department of Defense.
I got your six, we got your back. Got your six, we got your back. Got your six, we got your back. I got your six.
Sixers, today, super special episode. Anytime I get to talk to somebody who's also a member of the Long Gray Line, West Point graduate, I just get excited and just amped. John Crowley is here today, President and COO of Steel Hearts Foundation. We're going to dive into the Paint True and Steel Heart collab that's going on, which is incredible. John, welcome. Glad to have you here.
Thank you, Tony. I'm excited to be here.
Well, so right now we were just talking before the show, fall is in full effect, especially in some places more than others. And being in the Northeast where you are now, like it just goes from like the flash to bang there is almost overnight.
That's right. Yeah, we just had our first, I guess you'd say, crisp day of fall. I'm soaking in every moment of it because I know winter's just around the corner. Boston's not known for their long falls, but I'm enjoying it. Right.
You got to make sure, get a hold of while you're down there, Boston's finest, maybe an Oktoberfest, if that's your thing. If not, win in Rome, as they say.
It's pumpkin spice latte season. So we got to get those in before it gets too cold.
Right. And you're in Cambridge, in Boston, Cambridge, because you're at Harvard Business School doing a joint degree, right?
That's right.
Talk about that a little bit.
So I transitioned out of the Army after a little over 5 years in active duty as an engineer officer, and started in the Harvard joint degree program between the Kennedy School and the business school. And it's just been an amazing ride, tremendous opportunity. Started the K School in 2019, basically did a full year of their core curriculum there and a few electives. Ran over to the other side of the river for all of last year for the business school core curriculum portion. And then this year, my third and final year, I'm taking electives at both schools. So I'm a bridge runner, as they say.
There you go, back and forth. And now that you've been away, you've had time to reflect. Is there something like you've really taken away from your time in service that's been super beneficial? I know you're starting again, but at least initially being where you're at.
Yeah, it's a great question, Tony. And I wish the answer was I crush a awesome workout every morning. I think that's probably a standard answer coming from some of your.
Yeah, you cut out there for a second.
Lost the headphones. I think it's low battery. Is it okay, or is it too echoey?
We're gonna roll with it. I'll intro the question again.
Sure.
We'll come back in, and we'll go from there. I'll make sure I got making notes, so not to worry. So,
thanks. Sorry about the battery situation.
It's fine. I heard clicking in the background initially, and I was like, that doesn't seem like it's him based on the sound stuff. I was like, maybe it's the batteries. Sure enough, it was the batteries.
Yeah, it died mid-answer.
All good. So being up in Cambridge, or Boston, specifically Cambridge, you've had some time to reflect, getting out of the service. Is there something you've taken away from your time in service that maybe you didn't appreciate while you were in active duty?
Yeah, I think, for me, it's more of a mindset thing. I think, I wish the answer to the question of what have I carried over has been like amazing morning workouts and this fantastic routine. Candidly, I don't have a set routine. My day is relatively full, and I try and squeeze in, a workout when I can and personal time, of course. But really, the only thing that's consistent from the military is drinking coffee every day and every morning in terms of the tactical. And then from, I think more than anything else, it's a mindset perspective and just the idea of, treating people with dignity and respect, things that are important to, live the Army values. Greeting people is like a small thing. I think goes a long way. It's something you and I, Tony, learned as plebes at West Point, just to say hi to people as you pass them. It's amazing what that does. It goes a long way. And
just even things with the mask on, right? Like you can just see people's eyes now, and like that, like friendly expression is like very pleasant.
Right. Like I think they call it smiling with your eyes, maybe.
Yeah.
It's top of mind because I have a professor, Arthur Brooks, who gave an opening our opening remarks to kick off our EC year at the business school with a discussion on smiling with your eyes. Apparently, he studied the science of happiness, and that's an important component of it.
Look at that. Already on the cutting edge, and we're like 2 minutes into the conversation. I would expect nothing less between our interactions. You know what I'm saying?
Of course. Yeah, I think.
Go ahead.
No, I think just to round out the question, it's just more of a mentality. I think a bias towards action, and just recognizing that you have an amazing opportunity, just like we did, and you still do as a public servant and someone who's wearing the uniform, to be your best every day, and just recognizing making the most of it.
That bias towards action, where does that come from for you? Because it's different for everybody. Where specifically does it come from? Yeah, you know what I'm saying. Yeah.
I think it starts with it's something that's innate, I think, in most of us who choose to serve. And I think everyone has it to an extent. And just kind of listening to that call to action. And I think finding role models goes a long way. So thinking about, starting at the academy and looking up to upperclassmen, and certainly making the transition out of the military, and it's a well-trodden path from active duty service to an MBA program. And so just like following in others' footsteps and saying, like, this can be done. It's been done before, and just kind of leaning into the momentum and the energy and the amazing support system that's available, and taking advantage of it.
You touched on mentorship. Is there a specific mentor that sticks out to you?
I think it changes so often, right? I think that's kind of the beauty of it. It's more of a dynamic thing. And so, I think probably early days at West Point, day one, you look up to your B squad leader, right? Like that's the first person with authority you meet after you're kind of humbled down as a new cadet, and you kind of are kicking off your military journey. And that shifts, right? Like you move into your academic company and you identify, the top students, the top athletes in your company. And then you move on to the Army and you look at who's going to Ranger School and who's just doing really, really well. And you just find new mentors and new leaders from there. I think, probably the biggest influence in my military career was my battalion commander during my platoon leader and XO time, Lieutenant Colonel Joe Geary. Just the embodiment of a paratrooper. He had served as a company commander during the Hurricane Katrina days when the 82nd responded to that humanitarian effort. And he took over again prior to our deployment to Afghanistan in 2017. He was just an incredible individual, and someone I think we all looked up to a great deal.
What made him incredible specifically? Like if you had to pick out one thing.
Well, I think more than anything else, he just kept it real, right? Like he wasn't someone that was inaccessible. It wasn't like he was definitely one of the people. He took the time to speak to people. He worked out with us, right? He would scoop you up, and I'm sure you've been through this, Tony. You're getting ready for to go out for a run. This is the time when we were on staff. And it's just a captain's jog. You're looking to maybe crush a few miles at a nice, maybe 9-minute pace, maybe a little bit less. And the battalion commander comes by and scoops up the young captains for a 5-mile Ranger standard PT session. And so things like that, like you can't really teach that. It's just something that I think people pick up on, and it goes a long way to just build a relationship in an authentic way with people.
Yeah. And that goes back to initially, right? Smiling with your eyes, that authentic connection. Like you can fake applause all the time. You can't really fake laugh to somebody, like, because you can tell how quickly inauthentic that is.
Right. I think just people respond to that. Soldiers respond to that, right? Like your average Army private is paying attention to everything that moves, right? Like they're constantly assessing the situation. And they respond to, I think, authenticity, and whenever you can level with your troops, or whenever you can level with your teammates, even thinking outside the military, I think that candor will takes people far.
Yeah, and that candor is allowing for the successes that happen in life, and also those failures, right?
That's right.
Like we've all had them. Like, what failure has really shaped you throughout this journey?
Yeah. There's several that come to mind. the earliest one in kind of the military experience was my final PT test as a new cadet. I failed my final APFT right before kicking off to the school year as a new cadet, and I feel like
we'll talk real quick. APFT, 2-mile run, 2 minutes of sit-ups, 2 minutes of push-ups, not in that order. Those are the events, though. It's
that's right.
Sit-ups,
that's right.
2-mile run. Yeah.
And I failed by one push-up, and I think it was probably I was probably in my own head, right? Like just the worst case scenario. All of your academic leadership knows when they inherit you is that you're a PT test failure. No context, right? You're just a red flag kind of moving in, and that was devastating after what I thought was an awesome kind of first summer. So that was kind of tough, and you get to earn your way back from that, and certainly put in the extra time to correct the situation. But then just the failures that come with just being in the military, right? Like a recycled sapper school on the patrol phase, my first time through, that was tough, right? Being a holdover and having to go through a second round of the long walk again. And then thinking ahead to jump master school, I failed my JMPI exam the first time through as well and had to recycle that course. So,
right. And for JMPI is, for those who don't know.
Yeah. Jump master personnel inspection.
Which is like the final test of jump master. Like you have to be perfect.
That's right. So you have it's they call it shadow boxing when you're practicing for the parachute and the personnel inspection, but it's a sequence that you memorize and you're on a time standard, and it's tough. I mean, it's just something that requires practice, and many people fail the first time through, and you just learn from those moments and those points of failure, and just learning to embrace it and kind of lean into it.
What during each of those three things, right? So it was, 1 rep on the push on the PT test, the physical fitness test, having to walk again in Ranger or Sapper school, seeing everybody kind of graduate and then go back. And then also, JPM going through jump master and having to do that again. Like, what's the one thing that's the connective tissue across all of that? Like what helped you to be like, hey, I need to check my ego or whatever it was, come back because I know I can do this?
Yeah, it's a great question, Tony. I think the answer has to be resiliency, right? You can get in your own head really easily with all this stuff, right? You start to question, am I good enough, right? Like as a new cadet failing your first PT test, that was a question I had. Like, am I going to make it here? At Sapper school, watching your buddies who are, staying up all night in the patrol base with you, graduating, getting their tab, and you're kind of in the audience watching them, knowing that you're at least a month away from that, at least, right? That's tough. Then you say, am I really cut out for it? And you kind of have to dig deep. There's no way to accelerate the process, right? You just kind of have to go through the motions, sleep on it, do what you can to set the conditions for success the next time around. If it's something that's more tactically oriented that you can practice for, if there's a mental component to it, like at jump master school when you're memorizing your pre-jump, which is your effectively, for those who don't know, it's 5 to 10 minutes of pre-airborne operation instructions from the jump master leadership team, and you have to memorize. I don't know how many words it is, but you have to memorize this thing, and that's a mental exercise. So it really just takes time to recalibrate, refocus, and kind of remembering what brought you to that point in the first place, and building that confidence back up, I think, is key.
Yeah, and like you said, that resiliency piece is incredibly essential. Like with your work that you do over at Steel Hearts, and having to constantly interact with Gold Star families. And for those who don't know, a Gold Star family is someone who's lost a service member. And you go ahead. I don't want to take your thunder because you know that space incredibly well. And it's just such a, yeah.
Thanks for calling that out, Tony. No, it's true. Being in the military, I know your class, West Point class of 2010, thinking of folks that we remember at Steel Hearts, whether it be Todd Lampka, Chase Presnicki, Sean Jacobs. These are guys you knew. These are your classmates. These are your buddies.
I mean, Todd's on my wrist, right?
That's amazing.
People can't see that. And thank you, John, for sending that. It just came in right before our conversation.
I'm glad it got there on time. We worry about supply chain issues, and it's good to see that it made it to safely to its destination. But yeah, just being able to kind of recognize, we only have so much time here on this earth, and being able to run Steel Hearts and honor, fallen graduates of all academies. From it started as kind of honoring graduates who were killed in action, and we've expanded to recognize people we've lost due to PTSD, mental illness, right, suicide, and of course operational losses that happen tragically as well. Yeah. And that affects every single class, and it affects everyone who's even beyond the military, right? We all lose people in our lives, and it's up to us to figure out ways to make meaning of that and remember them in a way that does their life and legacy justice.
Speaking of legacy, we had Brendan on over at Paint True last, an episode ago, and he talked about the incredible collaboration that the two organizations have kind of come together. And I think it's just incredible when it comes to remembering and the legacy and preserving these heroes that have walked among us.
Yeah, Brendan and JD over at Paint True, I hats off to them. They reached out to us over the summer with this amazing idea to collaborate and kind of go beyond what, our product offering is really simple. We sell high quality commemorative steel bracelets. They wanted to kind of take it a step further and say, let's do something really special here. And paint all these fallen graduates kind of on the 20th anniversary of, looking back at 2 decades of war, kind of doing something special to recognize for all these men and women and their families, a way to give back. And they have an amazing platform over there where they turn, your favorite memories into high quality, professional pieces of artwork. And so the synergies there were really obvious. And we said, yes, of course, let's do it. And since that time, it's been off to the races in terms of fundraising, to making sure that we actually have the resources available to get all these paintings done. And then, of course, distributing them in a few months' time to families. And for those who, whatever reason, don't want a portrait in their home, working with those families to make sure that the portrait finds a place of honor on a wall, in a museum, in a school, in a church, in a community center. I think it's a really incredible way to kind of carry the memories of our friends and classmates forward and into a physical space.
And that's the beautiful thing, I think, about this collaboration, is that it's enduring, right? You can put, a Dan Hyde in a library or in a school as people walk in and remember, like, he went here when it called to do the ultimate sacrifice in service of his nation. He didn't hesitate to say no.
That's right.
And it's powerful.
It goes back, Tony, to that point on role models, right? Like, who do you look up to? And what could be, I just think about, I think we're getting sirens here.
That's fine. Yeah.
We'll give it a second to pass.
You just jump back in with the role model piece.
Yep.
Dude, I have goosebumps right now. Goosebumps.
Love it. Love it. This is what happens when you live on Broadway.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're good.
You're talking. Yeah, it goes back, like you said, it goes back to that part about role models, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right, Tony. So, just the idea of role models. Who do we look up to, and what could be, what better role models than someone like Dan Hyde, right? To put him in front of a younger generation, the Gen Zers, right, or even the generation after Gen Z, and say, this is someone who not only made the ultimate sacrifice, but lived life to the fullest and was an outstanding human being. And what better source of motivation for a young, girl or boy coming through a high school or coming through community center or leaving church, right? Like with their family. I just think it's a special way to kind of remember people and give them their due respect in a place of honor.
Absolutely. And it speaks to your commitment to service, like you personally, John, as you've hung up the uniform, you're doing all these great things. You're at Harvard, right? You're talking the peak of I mean, I would say Cornell's a little bit, but that's just personal bias on my side. But no, really, to that point of service, and it's just not only with your work at Steel Hearts too, your work with legacy. And I really want you to touch on that a little bit too.
Sure. Yeah. And just briefly to close out, the thought on Steel Hearts, Tony, you're exactly right. It's, the reason I joined in the first place, was just by way of a cold email to Joe Wiseman and Chris Mers, who are our co-founders and executive directors at Steel Hearts. It was a cold email. I'm a brand new second lieutenant. It was prompted, just candidly by an Association of Graduates letter, an AOG letter, asking me to donate to West Point. And I thought to myself, as a young lieutenant, well, excuse me, you guys know how much I make. It's not like I can fund a new library here, right? With my lieutenant salary. But it was kind of a wake up call in the sense like, I should give back. I don't have the financial means to do it, but I should give back. And I can give back through my time, give back through my effort. I think that's what you're doing with this podcast, right? And so it's paying it forward in other ways. We're an all volunteer team, and I would encourage anyone to really reflect on that and find ways to contribute your time to something that gives you energy and can make a positive difference in the world.
No, absolutely. And you're not the first person to talk about it. And that's a common theme among all the people we've talked to so far. In these first 25, 26 episodes, it doesn't matter if you don't have the financial means. Everyone's got the same amount of time, right?
That's right. And maybe to just bridge the gap between your original question about my work at Legacy, which the name couldn't be more fitting. Apparently, I'm in the legacy business on the nonprofit volunteer side and on the for-profit side. Legacy is a really interesting company. I'm incredibly excited about the mission, and just for listeners, Legacy is a digital fertility clinic for men. We test and freeze sperm. I reached out in March of 2020, right before the pandemic, because I saw the CEO's winning pitch at TechCrunch Disrupt Berlin in 2018. I said, this is a guy I want to follow, right? Role models, going back to that theme. It was really the first person I identified outside the military. I was like, this guy has a vision. He has leadership qualities, and he's onto something here. He's kind of seeing farther, faster with the idea of testing and freezing sperm, the idea of male fertility being an important part of the conversation, and destigmatizing the idea that fertility and family building is a women's issue.
No, and that's absolutely huge. That it's both. Yeah, keep going.
Right. This is our CEO Khaled's tagline, but we say that men are 50% of the fertility equation. Let's be 50% of the fertility conversation. Yeah. Right. To rebalance that. And so, I reached out, not because I'm a dad. I don't have kids. But I reached out because I was inspired to do so after spending time at the Kennedy School as a student in Ash Carter's class, the former Secretary of Defense, who I learned attempted to get a sperm and egg freezing program launched in 2016 towards the end of his tenure in the Obama administration.
I didn't know that.
And that program went unfunded. And so really, this isn't me being super creative here. This is me copying and pasting a play out of the Ash Carter playbook. And I brought it to the CEO and I said, I have no experience in the space, coming from the military. I don't know how startups work, but let's give this thing a shot. I think it's a critical product / service for the military, right? Everyone should be thinking about testing and freezing their sperm prior to, combat deployment, any operational events that maybe, come with risk. It's just common sense. And I truly believe this is going to be something that is normalized for service members and anyone more broadly with dangerous jobs. And so it's just been off to the races since that time. Khaled was gracious enough to take me on, and I've been working part-time as a student. And I'm planning on joining the company when I graduate in May of 2022.
That's first, congratulations. And two, yes, as you process to go on a deployment, you make sure you have a will, you do all these things, but you don't think about you think about a legacy with your things, but not with people. And that's so fitting, right? It's called what it is. That's not by chance. I get that.
Of course. It's a question of timing, right? Like why that's the startup question. Like, why this, why now? Science has come a long way, I think, in the space. And I think also people are open to having that conversation, recognizing it's not for everyone, right? It's kind of a more progressive idea. But for those that are open to freezing their genetic material, why not do it? This is, literally life-changing stuff that can afford people the ability to have families on their own terms, which I think is just an amazing thing.
Which goes back to your original point of, having the right role model in the right place at the right time.
There it is.
Look at that. So I have to close then. We've already done the full circle. John, how are you better than yesterday?
Yeah, well, I think we've probably touched on it. I love this question, by the way, Tony. I'm better than yesterday because I had this amazing opportunity to go to school today, right? Just recognizing that huge privilege. You went to Cornell. It's an Ivy League institution. Not taking that for granted, right? You're in a classroom with some really, really smart people who are way smarter than me, right? I was not a Rhodes Scholar. I was not a Truman Scholar. I consider myself very lucky every day to be walking around the Harvard campus. And so I'm better than yesterday because I was in a classroom today with Arthur Brooks for nonprofit leadership and management at the Kennedy School, took a walk across the river and had a class with Jim Matheson on the entrepreneurial finance. What a great privilege. The opportunity to learn is truly a gift. And so trying to be mindful of that and enjoying every day of it, knowing that graduation isn't too far away.
Right. And also, like you said, every story you've told, you've reached out without any prior experience. And you just said, hey, I'm really interested in what you're doing. I would like to learn more. And people being gracious enough to be like, yeah, I'm more than happy to tell you. So with that, if people want to come and talk to you, John, where are they going? Where are they reaching out?
Yep. You can find me on LinkedIn. I answer any inbounds from veterans. No questions asked. Happy to hop on the phone. I'm happy to provide my email address. You can email me at john@givelegacy.com or john.crowley@steel-hearts.org. Reach out. I'm happy to pay it forward. I'm here because so many others did the same for me. And I'm sure you feel the same way, Tony.
Absolutely.
It's all about paying it forward and helping the next group come through and taking care of our people. And so, I just think, I encourage listeners to reach out. Let's connect, let's talk, let's figure out, what the next chapter looks like for you. And looking forward to meeting the listenership.
John, thank you so much for having our six.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks for having me.
I don't know what you've been told, Sixers, but the lawyers would like us to remind you that the views, opinions, and comments expressed on the Got Your Six podcast are solely those of the hosts or guests, to include current and previous Department of Defense employees, and should in no way be considered the opinions of or endorsements on behalf of the Department of Defense or any of its components, divisions, contractors, or other current and previous staff members.